We're going to start off this morning with a hard theological truth that nobody ever wants to hear. And maybe you already know this, maybe you don't, but I want you to brace yourself. We, Unitarian Universalists, are the direct descendants of the Puritans. Specifically, the Puritans of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Those are our folks way back. Long ago, the Puritans left England and other European countries bound for this continent, which they thought of as a new world. They left their homes and they made the perilous journey across the Atlantic Ocean to establish colonies in what we now call New England. They did this for two reasons. One was to escape corruption and opulence in the Church of England, and two, to loosen the grasp of the state over their religious lives. When they arrived on this continent, they established churches where they had to worship together in the face of some pretty serious theological differences. Little known fact. To us, the Puritans probably seem all the same, and their differences seem like splitting hairs when compared to our modern theological differences. The differences that they had were mostly about the role of conversion experiences and the person and divinity of Jesus. It is fully possible that Puritans sat together in their white clapboard churches thinking that other members of that same church were definitely going to hell. But what's really fascinating was that they knew that they were going to have those theological differences all along, and they planned to cope with those differences. They had to, because they didn't have the resources to support separate churches or to even make it to this continent without each other. They needed their time, talent, and treasure to make it work. They had to figure out how to be one church with a diversity of beliefs. What held them together and their differences were what they called bonds of mutual concern rather than mutual belief. They chose to be one religious body with differences before they ever set sail. They chose to create pluralistic churches, and they participated in those churches of their own free will. Accordingly, they used a radical form of church governance in which members who met a standard of belief and social status were allowed to vote. Anyone who met mutually agreed upon standards was allowed to vote, and this was a radical idea in church life at the time. I'm talking 17th century here. Over time, and through the violence of empire, they amassed enough material wealth that they could form new congregations that did develop theological identities that were distinct. Now that the Puritans didn't have to rely so much on each other for survival, they were less willing to put their differences aside. And mutual concern had lessened along with the rise of mutual belief. Cracks began to develop in the relationships between those congregations, liberal and conservative congregations. And at the same time, the Puritans' form of decision-making had come under pressure from another group, the Presbyterians. In order to protect their churches and the power, the civic power that they had amassed, the Puritans needed to establish a clear political majority. And they did that by creating a new legal document called the Cambridge Platform of 1648. I am not going to give you a test later. It's interesting, though. It outlined the concept of congregational polity, or the church decision-making process in which members vote and thereby have final authority. Okay, to recap. At first, there were a few Puritan congregations that were home to a variety of theologies, and then there were several congregations that had distinct ideologies and theologies. With the encroachment of Presbyterianism, they realized how much they still needed each other, so the Puritans found a way to remain connected but still independent. Theologically, the Puritans and Presbyterians were pretty compatible. They were all Calvinist. But what set them at odds was their decision-making process, their governance model. For the Puritans, the most important thing was not that they believed the same thing, but that the decision-making authority rested with the members of the congregation, not an outside authority like a bishop, a diocese, a presbytery, and eventually, not even a king. When they were under threat, They codified these convictions in the Cambridge Platform, bringing the now theologically distinct Puritan congregations into one accord, gaining the political majority in New England. The Cambridge Platform identifies 6 ways in which a church can be in communion, or what we would now call covenant, with other churches. This spells out how these churches could be independent, yet related. It also clarifies the structure of the Congregationalist church, including the various roles that exist, like pastor, elder, deacon, and so on, right down to the role of members. Members were responsible for maintaining the church through labor and financial contributions. Church members also had the right to perform ordinations, and perhaps most importantly, they voted for their own officers. Modern interpretations of the Cambridge Platform are still in use today by the churches that use congregational polity: the United Church of Christ, the American Baptist Church, and the Unitarian Universalist Association. Down our branch of Congregationalism, a lot has changed in our theology and our goals. What hasn't changed is our commitment to putting ultimate authority with the members of a congregation. Our congregation just added new members just now. We just did this. And in doing so, we reminded them and everyone else who was already a member that your time, talent, and treasure are required for the maintenance and the growth of the congregation. And when the time comes, we charge those new members and everyone else who is a member with voting for officers and other points of congregational business. To set and maintain a course of a congregation is a privilege, but it is also a responsibility. One of the things that sets Unitarian Universalists apart from other American religious traditions is that our congregations don't do things without the leadership of the lay people, no matter how big the congregation is. If you want a program to exist in a UU congregation, you typically are welcome to start that program, following the policies and procedures set forth by the elected Board of Trustees. But what will not happen is a vague wish that a program will materialize with the understanding that the staff are somehow responsible for doing it, or maybe it's the board will do it, or just some hazy notion of a they will make it happen if you just complain about it enough. That does not work. If you want a program to exist, you are responsible for bringing it to life, again, within the framework expressed by the board. We are a congregation of the people, by the people, for the people. Now, as Evan mentioned earlier, UUCFW has a very intimate understanding of this, having gone through a significant period of time without a settled minister. There was a period of time with no professional leadership, no professional clergy leadership. There was a 2-year interim and now a 1-year contract ministry. If anyone in the constellation of UU congregations knows that a UU church is made up of UU people doing the work, it is the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Fort Wayne. It's us, it's you. You know that if you want something to happen in a UU congregation, you have to make it happen, because that is an expression of the will of the people who have the ultimate authority. The church is you writ large. This part is just the building. This is the church. This part right here, that's the actual church. We can know the people of a congregation by examining the work of that congregation. That tells us about the needs of the people who are co-creating the congregation. Our Puritan progenitors thought of their churches as being islands of safety and righteousness, living in an inhospitable world. I don't think it's wrong for a UU living in a conservative area in 2025 to feel that same way. It is obvious that you do feel that way on some level based on the number and types of fellowship groups currently available at UUCFW. They're mostly identity-based groups that provide a safe harbor in the storm, and there are also social justice groups that provide a framework for the average person to work against injustice at a bigger level, like local or state politics. things that a person would struggle to do on their own. Those identity and social justice groups are the will of the people, this people. Someone wanted to start those groups, and others wanted to participate. People have taken on leadership roles, and others have shown up when the time comes. It is therefore an expression of the will of the people. Without the labor and material resources of the people, you, the people, those programs don't exist. It's a very democratic process, and our Puritan forebears intended for us to have that type of process. Who has been a leader of a committee, an identity group, a fellowship group, or a social justice group in the last church year or this church year? Who's been a leader of one of those groups? Raise your hand. Yeah. Okay, and who's participated in one of those groups? Right. That is the church. That is the work of the church. Our Puritan spiritual ancestors would most likely find Unitarian Universalists unrecognizable, and I would say that that's a good thing. For that matter, the world would be unrecognizable to them. And again, I think that's a good thing. A lot has changed, and we, UUs, have changed along with it. But I think if we dig a little bit, we find a lot of the same struggles. They were concerned with keeping congregations and congregants independent yet interconnected. As a society, we are facing the brutal irony of being more connected to each other than ever before. There are more venues for connection than ever before. And also, we are further apart than we have been in decades. In my lifetime, we are further apart than we have been. Especially for those of us who are not here for an act of public confession, I wonder, why are we going to church? I have questions about this. Loneliness is on the rise. Violent and divisive political rhetoric is on the rise. In the middle of that, church affiliation declines, especially in liberal churches. So why are we here? It's a fascinating question, really. Why do liberal people go to church, especially UU churches? There's no punishment if you don't come. Why do we feel that we need to go to church if we're not compelled, especially in a congregation that expects so much of you? I think it is because we are looking for that same thing that our Puritan forebears were, and that is a sense of connection that does not impinge upon our personal freedom. Affiliation that does not swallow our identity. People, all of us, need to feel that we are connected to other people and to something that is bigger than ourselves, such as the congregation or perhaps a higher power. We need to know others and to be known by others. Ultimately, the purpose of church, we are here to be human, out loud, in public, together. Imperfectly, beautifully, fully. That need has not changed. That need will never change. And because of the way that we make decisions, UUs, because of that congregational polity, we are very good at building those connections. A connection that does not demand all of who you are. In the words of this morning's readings, we are here to be put to use. We're very good at that in UU congregations. Our church does not exist outside of the context of the people within the church. We are the church. We are connected to other UU congregations through the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are influenced by other congregations in the UUA. We share covenants and foundational documents like bylaws. But UUCFW is our own self-governing entity. We are not compelled by an outside source of authority. There is no outside source of authority. You, the members in good standing, are the only source of authority in this congregation. In order to be part of a church that makes its own decisions, we must give of our time, our talent, and our treasure. We make our own plans through the democratic process, and we are therefore responsible for funding those plans and for providing the labor to make them happen. That's what it means to be a member of a UU congregation. We have the freedom to choose the direction of the congregation and also the responsibility to nurture those decisions. A lot, thankfully, has changed since our Puritan spiritual ancestors came to this continent. Those Puritans who created the bedrock of Unitarian Universalism would most likely find us upsetting, but we also find them upsetting, so I think it's okay. Every decision, every change that has taken us from there to here has been made faithfully, thoughtfully, and democratically. We are the rightful inheritors of their legacy of a gathering in mutual consent rather than mutual belief. In these times of change and challenge, let us continue to seek the company of people who do not exactly share our beliefs, but with whom we can fully share our lives. May it be so. Amen.